I'm just going to thank you guys for showing up with me because, we plans thwarted, but we persevere, we postpone, we don't cancel. And I just appreciate that that's really been what we have done for the last, 4 months. So I appreciate you guys jumping on that journey with me. So instead of going live, which plans are foiled, we're hanging out on Zoom. And I just think this interview is important. I think that there's only so much that I can say from witnessing this awesome day that y'all had, which was my first teeny tiny micro wedding of 2020, thanks to COVID. And so, I've run the gamut, probably my smallest occasions, somewhere in the 45 to 50 person mark. So for me, and then all the way up to, 350. So having a tiny wedding, I figured a lot of the same principles would apply. We've all gone out to dinner with, 10 of our closest friends or whatever. And so we could kind of wrap our heads around what it could be like. But it wasn't really until we witnessed the day together that, I really saw from the inside how incredible this day could be, especially for others, So, but I feel like there's only so much I can say, as an event professional. Hopefully there's, this trust that's built up over 10 years experience and, those kinds of things that you'd say, oh, I bet Kate knows what she's talking about. But really, when it comes down to it, if I were a couple in y'all's shoes, I'm so grateful to hear what someone who's really gone through the process and been the ones getting married, it's a different experience that you guys can have that I won't have. So thank you for joining me and jumping into the conversation in hopes that other couples might, have a little less trepidation, a little less fear, a little less discomfort coming into something that's, currently still such an unknown. So this is Amanda and Michael. Sorry, I didn't say that to start.
Hi,
The newlywed, you guys are 2 weeks married tomorrow. How do you feel?
Great.
Good,
yeah. Glad we did it. Glad we didn't postpone.
Woo! Woohoo! Yes.
It's nice to have something to celebrate right now too, with given all the circumstances and what's going on.
Yeah, feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good. Seize the moment too, right? To and know what it's like on the other side. I think there's do y'all feel like a little, dare I say, relief maybe to have gone through it, have it had been amazing, and get to the other side of being married? Is relief a good word?
Yes. I feel like a weight has been lifted almost.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah, it's getting to that point, the build up, and it's definitely nice to finally be married and pitched.
Yeah.
So I had to step away and duty calls. So we are gonna just hang out with us, but Mrs. De Stefano is good to speak for you both when need be. And so I want to jump to all the way back, call it the day our nation said we were under a state of emergency.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about, what initial things happened for y'all. So, initial thoughts, initial fears, emotions, just any of that stuff, just right from the start.
It's actually really interesting. March is when I think the US kind of shut down, but we started having this conversation. All three, I am one of 3 girls, and we were all getting married in 2020. So we were at my sister's wedding at the beginning of the year when things were getting a little iffy abroad. And my dad looked at us at the wedding, my sister's wedding in New York City, and said, you guys definitely should start to reschedule your honeymoon. This was in January, and we were in such denial. We were like, no, everything's going to be fine by June. What are you talking about? It's not even here. Everything's going to be good. Totally. And so we were in denial, I think. as March started coming and things started looking kind of bad in the US, I know we started talking to you, but I think, to be honest, March and April, we were still very much in the mindset of like, June's going to happen. It's okay. We're going to be okay. I think we needed that in order to kind of like keep some momentum. And also, you were hearing a lot of March and April weddings being canceled, but there were a ton of brides who were still kind of holding out for the summer.
Sure.
We didn't know a lot. And we were kind of learning as we were going. So it was really hard just to say, okay, this isn't happening, especially when you've been planning something for 2 years. I think it was such a hard decision, and a lot of conversations with you. I think you would read our emails, hear our anxiety, and then be like, let's get on a call. So I think I have to say, at first it was like very daunting, but that we still held out a lot of hope for the first month or two. It wasn't until kind of like a month in and things were like getting worse, not getting better, they were starting to predict long-term stuff, that we kind of went into panic mode. And I have to say, it was like 2 or 3 weeks where I was not in good shape.
Fair.
And we were just kind of, you think of this day that you planned, and you had created this vision for us that got us really excited. I was never the type of bride. He was, I don't think, the type of groom who had like imagined what our wedding would look like. So after working with you and creating this vision, we got so excited. And I think the thought of canceling it or postponing the wedding made it feel like we weren't going to be able to have what we ended up being able to have.
Yeah. Do you, as you started to shift into, and I feel very similar in the time, it's like, keep the hope, April, yes, I understand, shift out of April. I had an April event that we immediately rescheduled, but I felt the same about June. Like, let's just hold on, like, let's just hold, see how things go, and let's not like lose the vision for this date. But as we were kind of wrapping that corner into May, that May 15th was that cutoff date that we were initially given by the CDC, that at least until this point, please don't gather in groups of more than 10 until, at this point we'll know more. And I think that really set in for me too, coming into that mid-May. It's like, all right, we really do need a new plan, because we don't see the kind of progress, we don't see the kind of, we don't see all of that happening to be able to move on. And I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I think I'm still surprised of how many regulations still need to be in place for us to function again. As a phase reopens, it's not a phase reopens and you don't have to wear your mask anymore. It's not like a phase reopens and you don't have to keep 6 feet away, etc. So like, I do think there's that place where how can we do this in a way where we can actually feel released, where you can enjoy a wedding day feeling COVID free? Like, can that be possible? And I think us dreaming up that new plan to say, okay, if this can be possible, let's see how it can be possible, and see, right? So talk to me about the transition for you guys going from, your 200-ish guest list to being, if it was only going to be 12 people.
So that was really difficult. And I think Mike and I both come from really big families, him being Italian, me being Lebanese. Our Thanksgiving has 60 people, right? So gatherings are really big and important. And it was, my first cousins are like my sisters and brothers. So wrapping your head around those people not being there was, I think, the most difficult part, to be honest. It wasn't about the big party. It was like the people we care about most not being able to be there. But you actually, in your email, you asked a really, I think, awesome question, which was like prioritizing. And once we started prioritizing us instead of the wedding, it totally shifted gears for us. So there was like a 2 or 3 week point, I think it was right before you gave us like a date. You said by May 15th, we have to let everyone know what's going on. And I think that was like the hardest 2 or 3 weeks where we talked a lot about wedding. And Mike and my father, we were having a conversation about this because we were talking to a lot of people and trying to like make it about him and I, but we, brought our parents involved and everything like that. And it was then that they both kind of looked at me and said, like, what is the point of this? And it was for us to get married, for us to commit to one another, for us to have this union. We'd spent 2 years waiting for this moment. So why let COVID postpone that when it has to postpone a party? So it's like the party can be postponed, but the actual marriage doesn't have to be. And that's when my mind shifted. I stopped prioritizing the party and everyone else's expectations and hopes. And we kind of became a little selfish, which as a therapist, I use that word in a very positive way. Sometimes we have to be a little selfish. And I think once we changed our priorities and focused on what was important to us, getting married that day was really important for us to continue to start our life together.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think part of the reality of marriage, so being on the other side of it, I think we're 11 years now, being on the other side of it, you realize that once you're married, and this is like a transition, of course, and engagement coming into being married, but once you're married, you as the unit are what matters. Like you are the first ones to make a decision. You're the first ones to bat around a new idea or talk a project or a life stage or, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing you do in those life momentum types of occasions is come together and figure it out. The first thing you do is not to say, what does everyone else think of this decision I could be making with my life? It's going to impact my life first above everybody else's life impact, right? So you get that inside of marriage, I think is really hard to have that perspective. And hopefully I can be, and your parents can be, that kind of influence to you, is to say, at the end of the day, when you make these life-changing decisions, y'all as a couple coming together and being that unit to think of yourselves first. It is one of those, air mask situations on an airplane when they say, hey, put it on yourself first before you put it on someone else. For you guys to be able to, move on in life with, the life that you want to have, for you guys deciding that for yourself is powerful. It's powerful for your marriage, like the actual solidity, the unity of you guys as a couple. I think that really what I think is COVID is teaching all of us in such a profound way is what really does matter most,
right?
Truly. And since we're isolated, since we do have to think of ourselves first and foremost, because whatever decision we make influences us and it influences the people around us, but it does influence us first, right? So, it is hard to put the selfish word out there, but I think it's really good for couples to do the practice of as a unit, as the two of us becoming married, partners in crime forever and ever, amen. As we come together, make that decision, that strengthens you guys as a unit and as a couple. And really, that is what, that's the trajectory you're going to be on now, in marriage.
Yeah. And the anxiety totally shifted once we made that decision.
Wow,
It was so hard to get to that point, but once it was like this weight was lifted and we could breathe again, because we no longer, there are so many restrictions and you're trying to work around restrictions and like, how do we make this work? And if we postpone it for a year, is that going to work? In the end, then we were able to focus in on the event that could happen as opposed to the event that can't happen right now, but you're still trying to plan it.
Yeah. It's so huge. I mean, anxiety for me, like the thing that causes me the most anxiety, and I don't know what occupation I'm in anymore because is to have to plan for a future that you cannot control.
Right.
So like for me, that usually comes in the way of making sure there's rain plans, making sure there's a plan B, etc. I mean, I don't know if I think a lot of other planners feel the same way. It's like, wow, how do we even navigate planning when this curveball has not even, we don't even know how to behave inside of it.
Right.
Like planning a wedding is just a lot of human behavior. How do we anticipate people, using the space or flowing through the space or, et cetera. There's just a lot of human behavior that is thought about in planning events, but the human behavior inside of a context which no one has known. I mean, we have no idea what this does or how it affects us.
Right.
It does make it virtually impossible to plan into an unknown future with an unknown, obstacle. And how do you do that? So I think it's smart too to have taken out, yes, we can't have the event, or it looks like we cannot have the event right now that we're planning on. What is the event we can have? What were some of the, and getting rid of some of those restrictions?
Mm-hmm.
How did you make it so, I don't know, work it out so it felt like, yes, we can do this in a way that doesn't feel like we're so restricted by COVID?
Well, I think it was really helpful. You mentioned in one of our conversations to think about our non-negotiables. That was so huge for us. So once we decided this is what we wanted to do, we said, okay, let's look at what's super important to us, right? At one point before the restrictions lifted and we weren't sure if like his family could travel because they were downstate, where the numbers were still pretty high. There was fears of like, okay, do we just get married, the two of us? That was not we did not want to do that. We didn't want to Zoom everyone in and just have the two of us. So we knew that if that was the case, that wasn't going to happen. We wanted to have our immediate family, as many it could be there. Unfortunately, we had to make the decision to move forward, even though one of his brothers and our sister-in-law couldn't fly over because they were in California. So we started like making this list. We still wanted to have it. We wanted an outdoor wedding. So we found an Airbnb. We wanted it to be a weekend event. So we like created that space to be able to do that. We wanted to have a sit down dinner. So we talked to you about what that could look like during COVID, how people could feel comfortable. We still wanted alcohol in a bar, but because of the CDC regulations, we didn't bring in a bartender, but we decided we wanted a caterer, and that was priority because food's so important to us and we can mix our own drinks, right? So I think it became understanding what are the non-negotiables and then maneuvering and figuring out what worked from there. So I think you really helped us to say, okay, what's priority? We didn't really need, because of our hopes of having a big wedding, like a first dance and a dance floor and a DJ. With 10 people, that felt a little weird to us anyways. So then we prioritized the food and the dining and made that the big event. And so making sure we made that list of non-negotiables, what we can let go of and what is just a priority. And then going from there and working with you was so helpful in like creating the entire vision of the day.
Yeah.
I also loved, because it was small, that there was a timeline. I mean, you're amazing with timelines, but it didn't feel so regimented.
Yeah.
And I actually love that, because I think weddings do have to be like 7 a.m. makeup, this, and you have to go, or else one thing's late, everything else is late.
Yeah.
We didn't really have to do that. We kind of could go with the flow. I felt like I really liked that. And that's never how I thought a wedding would go, but I loved that it wasn't as regimented, which kind of, I don't know, for that night, it felt really special.
Oh yeah, it was really special. I think that's one of the cool parts about a micro wedding is that you don't have to dictated by the quantity of people. There is just a reality that there's, once you get to a certain quantity of people, the flexibility goes away.
Mm-hmm.
It just takes so much time to communicate a change to 100 people or 200 or 300, 400 people, right? The amount of time it takes to wrangle them, to get them from one place to another, takes time. It's a reality, Whereas 12 people, for instance, after y'all got married and, kind of came back down the aisle, you got to connect with some of the people who had Zoomed in and said hi. We had some champagne passed to everyone, and, we had a little bit of sprinkling going on. Like we had a little weather to work around. We had a little bit of stuff going on. So it just kind of worked out perfectly that we didn't have some regimented thing to be able to say, oh no, we can't do anything else other than the thing that we have to do right now. It was, okay, we got the family formals kind of pounded out, and this is a really good transition for everybody to come into the air conditioning. Let it sprinkle a little bit, whatever it needs to do, come to the air conditioning, everyone mix their own drink, and, just had some time doing that. And that was, to me, that was actually one of the coolest moments of the whole day, because I didn't anticipate everyone coming in to mix drinks, but it ended up being such a delightful time of, hey, let me serve you, or hey, I'm going to mix this thing up, or, or whatever. And it's a priority to Mike. The bar was one of his favorite things to build and together, and then for everyone to mix drinks and have fun doing that. It was really an unexpected, cool thing that could happen. And it wasn't like you were sitting on a clock saying like, oh gosh, we really shouldn't do this right now. We got to move things along.
Right.
So that flexibility is definitely a perk. So tell me some of your favorite takeaways, beyond timeline to, maybe even touch on a little bit of like the priorities that kind of rose to the top that you loved. But I think if you could tell us what it was like to be a bride on the day of, and knowing that you had an entirely different day planned,
Right.
And coming into this shifted, you didn't have 2 years for this plan to sit with you, right? So this shift was really 5 weeks, I think about 5 weeks
Yeah.
that we, had to spend your wedding day. So right on the inside of your wedding day, talk to me about some of the things. First off, let's just talk about some of the things that were the positive, the happy, the unexpected, the delightful. Talk to me about some of those things.
I loved that we didn't have like a 7 a.m. My original wedding, I think wake up was 7 a.m. right? And like hair and makeup for everyone, like 5 hours, because we needed to get first look done before getting to, there was just so much going on all day. It was so nice being able to wake up. I got to sit by the lake. One of my favorite moments was like giving out my gifts, and my sisters were originally my bridesmaids. We didn't have anyone in the bridal party because there would be no guests watching the wedding. You and maybe like my mom would be the two people watching. So we took out all those people who would be standing up with us just so we had some wedding guests.
Sure.
But it was so nice. We had like time in the morning. So we all sat down and had breakfast. I was able to give my cards and my gifts to my family, and we all kind of sat and read it. It didn't feel rushed. It was just nice having, Mike eventually went to his parents' house because they had their own space to get ready and spend time with them. So like we were still able to do that, but it just felt like very warm and welcoming and not rushed. And I think the makeup and hair came at 1:00. So we had like the full morning to just like enjoy the lake and the lake house and take that time to really just like talk with everyone, have that space. So I loved that. I felt like that was amazing. And then the hair and makeup came, and that felt very much like glam. And I'm glad we got to do that. I felt very safe. All the girls who came were wearing masks, even though we couldn't because they were doing our makeup, but it felt very safe. We were in a very open space. And that felt really good because at one point, I think a week before all that stuff opened, that wasn't something that I had wrapped my head around that wasn't something that I might be able to do. But because that happened, it was really exciting. And my sisters gifted me that. And everyone was available because there were no weddings. So that worked out. So I liked the traditional part of some of that stuff, but also the non-traditional of us like having that time and, just being with my immediate family, and my dad was still there hanging out. So that was just so nice, and it didn't feel rushed. I feel like the day didn't feel rushed. And I can't speak for a big wedding, but I hear a lot of times people say it goes by so fast and you can't even really savor moments. So like take time to be present. I felt like I could be present the whole day, especially as a bride. I literally ate everything. I was able to be super present. We were just able to be there for the whole night because there was only 12 people, and be with everyone, which was kind of cool because you might not even have a conversation with someone in a 200-person wedding.
Most of the time you don't. Yeah.
So that was really cool. In terms of priority, we ended up, because we were having such a small wedding, we wanted a really intimate ceremony. It was really short, which we wanted, but we decided to do our own vows, which was something different that we hadn't decided in the big wedding. So things like that changed, that were kind of really nice. And, the boats going by honking and us waving. Mike said, I just loved that it didn't feel structured again. It kind of felt fun and loose. And the Zoom, I loved having a few of the people watching. I was really against Zoom at first. But when we found out like grandma could be on Zoom and some of our closest friends and family, it felt intimate. We didn't open it up to all 200, not because we didn't want everyone to be there, but I think we liked the intimate feel. And then after that, we didn't have Zoom. So the ceremony just had the Zoom, and then it was just the dining experience.
Mhm.
Food was a definite priority, and I don't think we skimped on that. We actually were probably able to go all out as a result of having 12 people. Would you
For sure.
agree? Okay,
Oh,
5
yeah.
courses I think would be impossible to.
Course, man, it was amazing. It was so amazing. It was such a great way to spend time. And I think one of the things that was so amazing about that portion specifically, not only, working with a caterer that really is like so skilled and awesome, so Pure Catering, I think, just knocked it out of the park. But I think what's so cool is that that was one of our, details from the start is food is easily one of the best ways for your cultures to be represented.
Mhm.
And to me, that has always been a part of the design, a part of the day is that, when I first, or when we really dove into things, you guys had just gone on a huge trip and had experienced all these locations that near and dear to your heart and seeing family, going with family and like, all of that. So culture just from the start of knowing you guys is a really important thing. And here's our venue. It's not culture specific. It's not really embracing Lebanese or Italian. It's kind of just older rustic lake house type feel. So the best way I feel like still to bring that about was in the cuisine. And I thought that was such a cool way to still embrace you guys, your cultures, where you're coming from, how you're coming together, on your wedding day, no matter how small,
And you still brought the original. I love that we only had 2 tables. I think there were 6 at each table. You still brought in a lot of the original design, which was really nice because if we do have the big wedding or party in the future, it might not be in June where there's different flowers or different, in a different season, it might look different. So I love that you still, I remember you saying to us, I don't want it to feel like a backyard barbecue, and it didn't. But
Yeah.
because I think brought in those elements of our original wedding, so it didn't really feel like we had to like just accept something different or we had to conform
Right.
and change because there was only 12 people. It was just
Yeah.
a smaller, it was just like a smaller image of what the bigger picture was going to be, which I loved. Like we used the same
Yeah.
plates, the same silverware, like all of that stuff. So that was really
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, and I think too, you spent so much time, and I think just a piece of advice to other people who are going through this, you have spent so much time devoted to a vision that if you've really come to love it so much, especially if it can be trimmed down, like, I think some visions might be so grand that to bring it down on a really small scale, it might be better just to let the original vision go and to dream up something new because it all feels new, it all looks like it's all just too new to try and make the thing that you had only see on the grand scale come to life, right? So that I totally get that. But I think for you guys and a lot of couples, your original vision really can be scaled down to being intimate. And I think that actually brought more intimacy because we could detail it a little bit more. We could, we took some of our original ideas and just, made them layered and, really special to each guest experience. And, I think when you only have 12, 20, even 50, honestly, it's, so nice to give the people that you wanted most to be there that special, just experience. Like, it's just so memorable.
And we still did like a first look. Like we did some of the traditional things that big weddings have, and it was nice because like we were rushed. I think we were there for like an hour and a half almost doing photos, and we still picked a different location. So all of that stuff, we didn't have to compromise on that stuff.
Right.
We could
Yeah.
pick where we want to do a first look. I didn't have my original wedding dress, which was kind of sad, but it can be fitted in time. But like those were the kind of things that we had to just kind of accept. I think letting go of some of that was difficult, but once you did, it was so much easier to just navigate and kind of accept that we don't have control over some of this stuff during COVID. But we were still able to do all of that, have our moment together, then come as a family. So that those were some of the things that we still really wanted and didn't want to compromise on, and we didn't have to.
Yeah, it's awesome. And honestly, some of the things that you did have to compromise on, and I don't know if it's just good fortune, or how it works out, but a lot of the things that were the highest priority to you are not the things that you had to compromise on fully, so like you didn't come to me saying, I can't get married unless I can get married in this dress.
Right.
Right. So if you had, we probably would have just like made every single thing happen to make it happen, which I think it still can happen. I don't think that's an example in which it cannot happen any longer.
Right.
But if it, and had it been a highest priority, we could have made it work. But I think one of the letting go things, especially as we prioritize and talk about those non-negotiables, that it does make it easier to let go because they weren't the thing that was the biggest. And, we can't have it all in COVID. We just can't. Like, this just has told us that we are, restricted humans.
Right.
We are, we have to care for each other and in ways that we haven't before. And I think that, all the lessons that we are learning, I think you guys were, I don't know, it was easy to walk that day into the version it could be. And, to be able to let some of that extraneous or anxiety ridden stuff kind of fall away because it wasn't, your top priority.
Right. And I think
So
each bride and groom have different priorities, right? I think some
for
people
sure.
would want that first dance or want music, even if there's 20 people, and that's great. And how do you then
Yeah.
work to make that happen? And I think that's where you came
Totally.
in and were able to create that vision based on what our personal non-negotiables and priorities were.
Yeah, totally. So in wrapping up this lovely interview, tell me some things that if I was not in planner mode and I was girl trying to, figure out with my fiance what to do, do have the wedding, not have the wedding. But let's say I'm thinking, we really do want to get married and we're just I can kind of pull down my guest list to be pretty small for the day of, but I just am having trouble like understand or feeling it or whatever, making the decision. What would be your advice to couples who are stressing?
Definitely find the right time to have this conversation. I think we learned a lot about each other. We're not one, as a couple, we haven't really had a lot of disagreements or arguments. And I think this could have created a lot of tension and frustration. I learned a lot about Mike in that it wasn't a good idea I wanted every night to talk about this wedding. I was like, okay, we need to talk about this on a Monday night after a long day of work. And we were in like a small apartment trying to navigate working from home and being in quarantine. So we realized that this wasn't something we needed to talk about 24/7 and picking a time to have those conversations. So it was like, okay, Saturday afternoon, let's grab a drink and talk about it together. Just so, because I think you can like talk about it forever and kind of go in circles. Making sure that you're really focused, listening, creating those priorities. I don't think it's an easy decision. I have to say, I was so emotional that night, and it was because of all the surprises we had. I mean, we had a 40-minute video of many people who couldn't be there sending us our well wishes, and that was in between dinner and dessert. And I was a mess because those are the people that I wanted there. So, but that also made it really special. So allowing yourself to be okay too, that it's not going to be perfect, but I don't even think the big weddings are perfect because things happen that day. So I think as a couple, it's just recognizing what it is your partner wants, what it is you want, what's okay, what's not okay, just really communicating about it. We had some really amazing conversations, and once we figured out how to have those conversations and when to have those conversations, it was helpful, and not bringing in too many outside voices. I think, again, this is really, of course, if your family's involved, whoever's helping you financially, all of those things. But I think this is something that you and your partner have to be on the same page about. And I think that's really important, and a good learning experience for upcoming things that happen. COVID really caused us to have to kind of step back from all the control we usually like to have, especially when planning a party. And I think also we trusted you a ton. This isn't necessarily about us as a couple, but I have to say that having you guiding us I kind of relinquished a lot of control at the end. I think you were like, can we have like certain napkins and menu? And I was like, sure. I don't even think I saw them, but they were amazing. And I think when you trust someone and trust your vendors and trust your wedding planner and trust the people that you hired, you almost have to just let them kind of help you and guide you. And that was so huge. We both trusted Kate so much that it allowed us to then kind of take a back seat for some of it when we didn't know how to maneuver wedding planning during a pandemic, because you're the expert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
Well, I
I
think
know it's long-winded, but
I know it's good. I think one of the pieces there though is, you've got enough real life. So that's any engagement, but when you've got a global pandemic that like no one knows how to get through it, no one knows how to navigate it. But take the wedding out of it. There's still so much to figure out how to navigate the new work situations, the new, going to the store is completely new. You've got so much that's going on that allowing yourselves to be in a position to be helped, to, let, people who have been in it professionally, even though it is a new scenario for everyone, is their prior experience. Like, I think thinking that we can just be a pro in every area of our life when it just isn't possible. I mean, like, even for me, being like the emotional growth that I need to have in my life would not have been possible without a therapist. Like, I knew that that was a place that I was not skilled and knowing enough in to say, hey, people turn to me to be a professional in something. Here's an area in which I am not a professional, and I definitely need someone to come alongside of me to be the pro, to help me, or help me help myself, right? Like how to be helped, right? And I think that's such a great position for you guys to have, allowed yourself to be in, because it does take an intentional decision. Hey, life is too much, work is too much, or this life trauma or curveball has been too much. This wedding is important to us, but it cannot be taking 40 hours a week of our life
right.
to do this thing. And I think recognizing that for people is huge right now. Like, real life is absorbing so much space. It is so much to handle right now, that recognizing that, and for people to say, hey, I'm going to depend on the people that I've already put in place. I've got all these wonderings about what the heck to do with photography. Oh, let me call my photographer, right? Like, to depend on those people that are right there, ready to help, at least come alongside and figure it out together. So commend you guys for doing that too, because it takes an intentional decision.
And just because you're having this small wedding doesn't mean you can't have the party later on. I think that's what we really loved. It's like, okay, we can still get married and have the wedding party in a year, in 2 years. You can celebrate an anniversary. You can renew a vow. Like, we all are going to want to get together and have a big party eventually. So kind of knowing that you can do that and that's okay was really helpful too.
It is really helpful. I think starting to separate that the wedding has to be followed by a big party is a shift we all are trying to wrap our heads around. I mean, that is how wedding days go, right? There aren't too many occasions in which you get married. Know that a lot of military couples have gone through that, or people who are overseas, or they have a destination wedding and they just get married with a small amount of people and then party afterwards. So it's not like it's never existed. It's just not been the common. And I think, oh, this is the way it's always been. This must be the way it has to be. Realizing it can't be that way, and that tension, that fight of saying like, no, but it has to be this way, but it can't be this way. And that and continued turmoil, I think, has been made so much more peaceful and calm by just saying these things can exist separately.
Yeah.
We can still get married. We also can throw a fantastic party. Okay, now then what? And I really look forward to y'all's party.
But we had the best time, and I'm so glad we did it. I have to say, looking back, the next day we both looked at each other. We are so happy that we decided to do this. It was different, and we missed a lot of people that should have been there, but it was such a special day.
So beautiful. It really was. I mean, from my point of view, that's my favorite
And you
thing
did
about
it all. I think you were umbrella runner, server, helped, set up, take down. You did everything. Wedding planner. I mean, you played, I think, 10 roles that night because we couldn't have
Yeah.
extra help.
That's just how it goes. It's all good. And of course, my pleasure, because it just is like seeing, I think my favorite view of the entire night was being inside, looking out the windows where the table was set up, and just seeing you all really at a height. Like it just, everyone was in a conversation, everyone was experiencing something, the joy was just could not be contained. And I think that's just such a great takeaway, that we think that we have to have all of these things for the day to be special.
Right.
And we forget that the actual act of two people joining in marriage, and the just whatever celebration naturally comes from that, is the thing that is so special. For me to just set up chairs and tables and all of that stuff, I can make it look special, but it isn't actually special unless people, really take that moment in, and it's like woven together with the act of marriage, right? Like that is what makes it so special. So I think not losing sight that the thing that makes it so special, magical, is, everyone's so worried, oh, my wedding day is not perfect. Oh, it's every wedding, oh, what if something goes wrong? Oh, what if it's this? What if it's that? What if it rains? All of those things. And it's like, got to keep into perspective that the thing that does make it the magical, the special, the amazing, the unforgettable is the fact that the marriage has happened. So, y'all are married.
Thank you. Thank you for all your help too. You did
Yeah.
amazing job.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Well,
Everything.
thanks for joining me.
Thank
It
you.
was a perfect day. Thanks for having me.
I hope
And
you help some of the brides. I know
I think so.
it's a hard decision, and whether you decide to postpone or not, whether you decide to do it in a year, whether you decide to just have a small wedding or wait to have the big wedding, I think in the end there's no right or wrong decision.
Yeah, it's so true.
Do what you and your partner feel is best.
Yeah. And you and your partner, right? That togetherness, all y'all learned just in having to come together to face adversity and obstacles, figure out what's important to you.
Mhm.
That's the good stuff. So even if it hurts.
Thank
Thank you for being on,
Of
Mrs. Estefano.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.